Hello, 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 my beautiful blooms, blossoms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Read, and welcome to my book garden. Actually, welcome to my basement, but there's lots of books, and I do have some crocheted flowers, so it's kind of a garden. Hello, Chi-Chi, Kiki. Welcome. How you doing today? It's almost Friday. Anything happen since Tuesday? Anything good? I'm glad you're good. Um, no, not really. Oh, yes, actually. Um, I have started making more fandom like candy bracelets. Like Taylor Swift, she has Swifties make those bracelets. Go to the concerts, they trade them. That used to be rave culture before that. And one of the things I like to do is when the ADHD strikes, I'll make random sayings. So since I'm going to a con and know there's going to be some Don May people there, I started making them again. Oh, you have some. Nice. I like making sassy ones or silly ones. One of my charm sets that I bought was animals, so it had geese in it. So I like putting like arson with a goose, just because I think it's hilarious and they're a very angry animal. But yeah, so that's what's new. I have little bags and I sort out the different bracelets, get the string and beads and letters there, and then I just kind of go to town with it and we go from there. But that's the biggest thing that's happened this week. Other than this is what I look forward to. But yeah, welcome. Oh yes, legalese. So this is Golden Terrace. I don't own anything from it except the physical copy in front of me and my time. Please don't come at me. I'm doing this for the heck of it and to put this book out here because, I mean, at least so far, it's amazing. And I know the publishing house is closed, so I like to have this out there because I think anyone should have access to books. And I know these are going for a lot, and some people are getting scammed, and I don't think that's right. So, with that out of the way, oh, you have an MDZS one that you got at a meetup last year. That's so cool. Yeah, I've got a couple MDZS. I made a few Heaven Official one focus ones. Because I heard there's going to be a Heaven Officials meetup, so those will go mixed in on the top. But yeah, no, that's really cool. I've definitely got some other ones in there. I've got Swabian and Baichan, Chenking, Zidian, etc. We Die Like Wei Wuxian, etc., etc. Some other tags. But anyway, that's not what you're here for. Oh, yes. This is also, if you couldn't already tell, a very chill live stream. I know that's not everyone's flavor. I will be responding to people in chat. I will be making side comments. If that's not your flavor, I'm sorry, but maybe stay and see how you think it is. You might be surprised. Anyway, we started volume 2 last time. Hey, Momar's Rover! How you doing? I hope you've had a good 2 days since last time. And anything new in your life? Oh my goodness, my voice is already acting up and we just started. Oh, I'm going to turn off my phone ringer. Little scattered today. Sorry. Shaking the screen. Hopefully we won't drop the connection tonight. I reset the modem right before we started. Ooh, what was that? My screen just suddenly dipped out. Pretty good. I've been getting into creative writing lately, which has been fun. That's awesome. That's really amazing. If you ever feel like it and want to share some of your works here, like you could totally put them in the chat. I'm cool with that. If it's like fan fiction or just in general, just the offers out there. I'd love to see it. Okay. Anyway, from last time, Yan Xiaohan had just gotten drugged with the white powder in this random village next to a fox temple. The villagers were away performing a sacrificial ritual, and this kid, who initially we thought might be mute, led Yan Xiaohan over to the shed, shut him in there, and then this powder starts coming up, and he's like, oh shit, this is the crazy addictive drug that aroused heavy aphrodisiac as well. And then we see that the person who has been tagging along and kind of teasing Yan Xiaohan is actually Fu Shen with like mecha legs that the Beiyuan army has developed for him, which is kind of cool. Like that's pretty awesome. But we had our fade to black moment where Fu Shen turned his head and kissed his face and raised a hand to knead the sweat-soaked back of his neck. Quietly consoling, he said, "It's all right. Don't be scared. I'm here." And now we start chapter 51. The next day near noon, Yan Xiaohan missed a step in his dreams and abruptly woke with a start. He was lying flat in the bed at the inn. His vision was filled with a plain gauze canopy. The quilt was tightly tucked under his chin. He wasn't naked. He was still wearing his inner robe. Yan Xiaohan, his gaze slack, stared up blankly for a long while, then finally remembered, amid a fierce headache, everything that had happened last night. First, he had fallen into a trap, and then he had been rescued and taken away. Midway, he had been unconscious for a while. When he had woken up, Fu Shen had appeared at his bedside. There had followed a lengthy sequence of sensual abandonment and lovemaking. He had been on the brink of losing control. Many details were confused and unclear in his memory. The only thing he couldn't forget was the elation that made one tremble, running almost bone deep. Wait. Fu Shen? He automatically reached out to feel the bed beside him. The other side of the bed was already cold, completely empty. Yan Xiaohan's heart instantly seemed to have been pierced. His face turned ghastly pale. He lifted the quilt and staggered out of bed. Not even putting on his shoes, he dashed out barefoot. Where was he? Had he had a preposterous dream, or had it really happened? How could Fu Shen suddenly have appeared here? Also, the person who had entwined with him had even unto death last night. Oh, hang on, let me reread that sentence. I did it wrong. Also, the person who had entwined with him even unto death last night, who had that been? He had been overstimulated by the drug. His brain was still numb, his memories and thoughts a mess. There were many obvious clues he hadn't even noticed. He was so panicked that he bristled. Caring for nothing, he pulled open the door and charged out into the corridor. Fu Shen just happened to be coming up the stairs holding a paper bag. The two of them came face to face on the landing. He wasn't wearing a mask. That completely uncovered, sharp and handsome face struck Yan Xiaohan's eyes without warning. "You're awake?" He raised his eyelids and switched the paper bag to his left hand, and as calm as anything, asked, "Why have you run out without your shoes?" The rims of Yan Xiaohan's eyes quickly reddened. He threw himself at him and hugged him fiercely. "Hey, not so hard." With his free hand, Fu Shen patted his slightly trembling back. "You're gonna snap my back." Having said this, he shut his mouth, feeling that there seemed to be something off about these words. "It really is you," Yan Xiaohan whispered. "I thought that I've been a complete fool." The surname Ren was pronounced like Ren, person. 3 water characters made up Miao. Ren Miao were in fact the radicals of the 2 characters of Fu Shen's name. Then there were his deeply hidden skills and even the so-called Miss Meng. With so many obvious and easy clues laid out in front of him, Yan Xiaohan had still looked without seeing like a blind man. Yeah, after the fact I kind of noticed the Meng, because he's Meng Gui. If he hadn't ended up in a dangerous situation last night, forcing Fu Shen to reveal his identity, how long would it have taken him to recognize this spouse who kept him company day in and day out? Fu Shen couldn't help laughing. "You haven't been very clever." He stroked Yan Xiaohan's back again and again, as if he were holding a big child. When he was a little calmer, he took his icy hand and led him back into the room and pressed him down onto the bed. "The floor is cold. Get a hold of yourself. Sit back down. I'm going down to get someone to prepare medicine and get a waiter to bring some hot water while I'm at it." Seeing Yan Xiaohan's dazed, completely lost expression, Fu Shen felt uneasy. He drew close, bent his head, and kissed his cheek. "I'll be right back," he emphasized. Physical contact was more useful than words. A bit of life finally appeared in those dead ashes of Yan Xiaohan's eyes. The roots of his ears reddened slightly. He tenderly touched Fu Shen's cheek with the back of his hand. "All right, go on." He seemed to finally wake from his disjointed nightmares. The numbness brought on by intense stimulation was gradually replaced by pain. The sequence of events came together into a line in his mind. His intellect, in shattered pieces all over the ground, was picked back up and struck back together, then once again toppled with a crash from the attack of countless vivid and intimate fragments like raging waves. Yan Xiaohan was stunned. All the things he hadn't dared to do on their wedding night out of concern for Fu Shen's health, he had done last night. It was an open question whether Fu Shen's knees could handle it. Well then. There was a rumbling explosion in his mind like sudden thunder and lightning. He abruptly stood up, blatantly remembering something he had been taking for granted since waking up. Fu Shen could stand. The door cracked open with a creak, and Fu Shen walked in. Before he could open his mouth, he was caught by Yan Xiaohan. "Jing Yuan, what's going on with your legs?" "Oh, you finally remembered?" Fu Shen lifted the hem of his robes and showed him the specially made black boots. "Bei Yuan's armaments department made them for me, with gears in place of joints. When you put them on, you can walk as normal even with injured legs." His legs were straight and long to begin with, and the iron plates in the soles raised him another few inches. Standing, he was about the same height as Yan Xiaohan. The tight black boots and 3 sets of silvery black clasps made his waist look even narrower and his legs even longer. His bearing was upright. He was practically a living temptation. Yan Xiaohan coughed uncomfortably. As soon as his thoughts went astray, his headache became even more intense. Holding back, yes. Last night, no, the night before that, the rain was so heavy. Did you spend all day traveling in the rain? On dark and rainy nights at home, you're usually in too much pain to sleep. Fu Shen stopped his mouth. I brought medicine mixed by Dulang. Taking it numbs the calves, leaving no sensation. Anyway, I don't need my calves to walk. It's really all right. I'm not lying. If there really is such a magical medicine, why didn't you take it before? Why wait this long? Yan Xiaohan wouldn't be taken in. Don't try to pull one over on me. Fu Shen was at a loss for words, then said in surrender, Fine. There's just one thing, actually. When I found you yesterday, I said I was especially sleepy. Do you still remember? Taking this medicine makes me sleepy. By the time I woke up, Prince Qi and the others had all cleared out. My fault, Yan Xiaohan said wearily, rubbing his temples. If I had recognized you earlier, I wouldn't have made you suffer so much for nothing. Fu Shen was particularly unwilling to listen to this kind of talk. He was just about to erupt. But seeing Yan Xiaohan's haggard appearance, he held his nose and contained himself. Don't worry about me. Think of yourself first. I went to speak to the doctor this morning. There's no doubt that the drug you were given is white dew powder. That's what it's called. It forms an addiction after a single use, and giving it up is very difficult. Send word to Prince Qi. Give up on this assignment and return to the capital with me to get treatment, all right? Why would there be white dew powder here? Yan Xiaohan asked. The white dew powder in the capital was brought by Taoist Chun Yang. Could the source of white powder be here? Fu Shen said impatiently, Why do you care whether it's white dew powder or black dew powder? An addition to this thing is a disaster. An addiction to this thing is a disaster. You know that better than I do. Wait until you're better, then you can pay attention to other people's lives and deaths. Yan Xiaohan shook his head. Jing Yuan, if you were in my position, you would also keep investigating. Bullshit! Fu Shen's anger soared. How is this happening to you any different from it happening to me? Will everyone in the Empire die without you, or what? How can you be so stubborn? Only after scolding him did he remember that what the doctor had said, that because of overstimulation of the brain from taking white dew powder, when the effects of the drug had faded, the person who took it would experience forgetfulness, disordered thinking, confusion, depression, and other such symptoms. He couldn't rush him or scold him, only quietly stay with him and help him gradually break this addiction. It was work that would require a long, constant trickle of effort over time. For Fu Shen, it was like making an old ox pull a rickety cart. Yan Xiaohan didn't have the strength to quarrel with him. It wasn't that what Fu Shen was saying was unreasonable. It was just that he wasn't receptive to anything now. It was as if he had a watermelon sitting on his shoulders. Even thinking just had become difficult and painful. Of course, he knew that silence would only make the atmosphere between the two of them worse, but surging emotional weariness and physical exhaustion, as well as gloom that no one could answer for, were filling his chest. He really couldn't gather the strength to try redeeming anything again. Fu Shen stood, frowning. Just as Yan Xiaohan thought he was going to slam the door and leave, the black boots stepped in front of the bed. Forget it. You don't have to go back. I can't control you. It was as if his heartstrings had been inadvertently plucked. Yan Xiaohan raised his eyes to look at him, his reaction sluggish. Astonishment was like a distant tide whose faint tremors could already be felt, even though it had yet to reach the shore. Fu Shen idly pinched the tip of his ear. His doting intent was all in evidence. If you don't return to the capital, then you'll have to be good and stay with me. Don't run around. Take your medicine like you're supposed to. Get your treatment like you're supposed to. Do you agree? Yan Xiaohan's expression was blank. He nodded automatically. So Fu Shen bent down and kissed the corner of his brow. That's all right. Don't be scared. Do what I say. I'm here to take care of everything. There was a strange, calming steadiness about him, perhaps an aura refined by years of commanding soldiers. It made Yan Xiaohan think that even if he was watching the world collapse, if Fu Shen was there, he would still be able to create a peaceful spot. In fact, Fu Shen was also possessive, but it wasn't obvious. When Yan Xiaohan was lively and frisky, he seemed cool and indifferent. Only at times like this would it all erupt. The only thought in his mind was that, whether in the capital or in Jingzhou, this man had to stay where he could see him. As for Prince Qi and the assignment, they could go fuck themselves. Just then came the waiter's knock on the door. Sir, the hot water is here. After the hot water, a table's worth of food was also brought in. After Yan Xiaohan had bathed and came out wringing his half-dry hair with a towel, he saw a dish of dark brown broth on the table. It had a piercing, medicinal smell. He couldn't resist asking curiously, "What is this?" Fu Shen served him a bowl of it and candidly said, "The restorative broth I specifically ordered. Isn't your back sore?" Hearing the word restorative, a suspicious redness came out over the roots of Yan Xiaohan's ears. He was wearing only an inner robe that revealed the skin of his chest and neck, so the redness was particularly obvious. The sight of him nearly dazzled Fu Shen. While casting half inadvertent glances, he thought that his slightly embarrassed appearance was both pitiful and adorable. He picked up the broth and tasted it. He thought that the flavor was just bearable. He picked up a robe from beside him and gave it to Yan Xiaohan to put on, and called him over to sit down and eat. The roles seemed suddenly to have been reversed. Before, it had been Yan Xiaohan taking care of Fu Shen in matters big and small, and now it was Fu Shen showing so much meticulous consideration. Especially since, coming from a man who was naturally rough and ready, this kind of meticulous consideration seemed particularly rare and precious. An indescribable feeling welled up in Yan Xiaohan's heart. It wasn't entirely sweet. There seemed to be some portion of unspeakable bitterness in it. It ought to have been him taking care of Fu Shen, but in the end he had instead made him run around in the rain, waited to be rescued by him, used him to relieve the effects of the drug, and he was making him exhaust his mental efforts on him. Self-hatred grew as wildly as weeds. Suddenly, white steam was curling up in front of him. He focused and saw that a bowl of broth had been placed in front of him. He automatically reached out to take it and saw Fu Shen take up the bowl by his own hand, raise it, and clink it against him. With soaring valor, he said, "Cheers." Yan Xiaohan was silent. I have a feeling we're about to go through the in sickness and in health aspect. Chapter 52. After eating lunch, Fu Shen saw that Yan Xiaohan's energy was failing. So he coaxed him into taking an afternoon nap. Only after waking up did the two of them go out to see the old doctor who had examined him the day before. Kuangfeng County wasn't to be compared to the county towns of the capital on the capital's outskirts. There were only a couple of well-known medicinal halls in the county village town. Oh my goodness, I am stumbling my words. Fu Shen's human skin mask had been applied by Dr. Dulang. Once it had been removed, it couldn't be put back on. When he had gone to see him in the morning, the doctor hadn't recognized him at all and had even asked curiously, Why didn't that young fellow from last night come? Did he entrust the patient to you? The plain and unremarkable face of Ren Miao was truly too different from his own face. Fu Shen had to brace himself and blurt out a lie. Yes, he had something else to do. You can just tell me anything you need to. They walked to the medicinal hall, while Fu Shen was wearing a bamboo hat that did nothing about Yan Xiaohan next to him. They were still stared at wherever they went. The old doctor's gaze was even more merciless. Seeing the two of them walk in together, he hit on the truth at once. I suppose you two are married? Even Yan Xiaohan was startled. Fu Shen asked, How can you tell? On the surface, this was a question, but in reality, it was an acknowledgement. The old doctor had Yan Xiaohan sit down. While feeling his pulse, he said, Apart from medicine, I've also studied physiognomy in my time. The two of you have the look of a husband and wife. Your fortunes are good, your stars aligned. Your road to happiness has been strewn with difficulties, but in the future there will be blessings. Hearing him say this, a bit of a smile appeared involuntarily in Yan Xiaohan's eyes. He said, Thank you for the auspicious words. The old doctor concentrated on feeling his pulse. Shortly, he pulled away the wrist cushion and said to Yan Xiaohan, I said this morning to this young gentleman that taking autumn night white causes addiction. It cannot be cured with medicine. You must get rid of it yourself. You're still young in the physical prime of your life. Though the drug has worn away some of your vitality, you'll be all right after a period of recovery. Moreover, I hear that you took it by mistake and intend to stop taking it. As long as you can resist the allure and endure some pain, in about a year you can rid yourself of it. Fu Shen, frowning, asked, Is getting rid of the addiction very painful? Yan Xiaohan understood what he had left unsaid. Pressing his hand, he gently consolidated him. It doesn't matter. As long as I can rid myself of it, a little pain is nothing. The old doctor shook his head. Autumn night white is like taking out a loan with interest. If you borrow money and spend as much as you like, when it comes time to pay, it means tearing out your tendons and peeling off your skin. I advise you to prepare yourself. When the cravings flare up, it's not something the average person can endure. If it were really so easy to get rid of, how would the streets have ended up full of sickly wrecks who had bought their families out to ruin? Bearing suffering wasn't a big deal for Yan Xiaohan. Since entering the palace, he had been constantly wading through mountains of swords and seas of fire. The staunchness of his temperament went without saying. It was only that Fu Shen couldn't stand to see him tormented, so he asked, Is there some way to alleviate it? The old doctor looked him over and slowly said, It isn't that there's absolutely no means of resolving it, only what? Asked Fu Shen. Only you'll have to put in some work, said the old doctor. What do you mean? Said Fu Shen. According to what I've observed after taking the drug last night, this young gentleman's sexual desire was aroused to an uncontrollable point, the old doctor said. This is precisely where the effects of autumn night white lie. First, it raises a person's spirits, as if they have been dropped into a paradise. Second, it makes a person's vital energy and blood surge, and their sexual desire flourish. So my thought is, since the two of you are lovers, when his drug cravings act up, you might perhaps try that means to alleviate it slightly. Fu Shen was dumbfounded. Will that work? The effect of autumn night white is nothing but making a person experience satisfaction and joy, he explained carefully to Fu Shen. Worldly happiness can be roughly separated into three types. The first type is the happiness of food and drink. When one is hungry and eats one fill, there is satisfaction. The second type is the happiness of the conjugal bed. When a couple is mutually attached and comes together in harmony, there is delight. The third type is the effect of drugs. When the drug captivates a person's mind, there is bliss. While the bliss of autumn night white far suppresses food and drink or sexual intercourse, perhaps they can be used to make up for it in somewhat of a way. For instance, if someone is addicted to sweets and you wish them to break the habit of eating candy, of course it will be hard for them to bear giving up candy all at once. You need to consider how to gradually reduce the amount over a long period of time, and only then can they become just like an ordinary person. I understand, Fushen nodded. Give him something sweet when the craving acts up, and he won't feel so bad. That's it exactly, the old doctor said, twiddling his beard. But there is one thing you must bear in mind. Seeing him in pain, you must under no circumstances let him touch autumn night white again. Soft-heartedness must be avoided at all costs. This time, Fushen didn't answer at once. Instead, he turned his head to glance at Yan Xiaohan. Yan Xiaohan smiled comfortingly at him. His features looked weary, but unusually gentle. What are you looking at me for? Are you afraid you can't be ruthless enough? Right, Fushen said with a sigh, standing up while holding his hand. Are you the one to be treated, or am I? The two of them left the medical hall carrying a bag of medicinal ingredients for invigorating yang and strengthening the kidneys. Did they just buy more aphrodisiacs? Like, I don't know about the kidneys part, but the invigorating yang. Like, maybe I'm reading into it. Yan Xiaohan left a verbal message for Prince Qi at a local money shop they were using as a liaison, notifying him of the lead of white dew powder appearing in Shishan village, and telling his party to proceed to Jingshou, while Yan Xiaohan stayed for a few days to investigate. While they had the leisure for it, the two of them strolled around the county town. The 4th month was a good time, when spring warmed up and the flowers bloomed, and in the south it was especially wet and warm. Kuangfen County abounded in any kinds of fresh fish and fresh white lotus roots, the distinctive flavor different from the capital. Though Yan Xiaohan's drug addiction had yet to be resolved, when it wasn't acting up, he was no different from usual. He concealed his dullness and low spirits very well, and roamed hand in hand with Fushen. He didn't feel that this time was hard to get through. Only after asking around in many ways did the two of them work out what exactly this so-called autumn night white actually was. It originated from a flowering fruit-bearing plant. It was said that an emperor of the previous dynasty had received it as a gift from Cheng Yi while traveling through the palace of the moon in his dreams. It often came in full flower on autumn nights, from which it took the name autumn night white. The flowers were pure white as snow. When the fruits were ground, they became the color of cow's milk. Consuming them made a person's body warm and intoxicated them. The crudely processed juice of the autumn night white fruit assumed the form of light brown filaments, which could be inhaled with an opium pipe. Refined autumn night white, meanwhile, assumed the form of brown, half-transparent lumps, something like amber. It was pure, and its effects were stronger. After it was ground down to powder, it only needed to be heated slightly over a fire to release a bewitching sweet smell. This type was the white dew powder that Yan Xiaohan and his people had discovered in the capital. There were many local households who grew autumn night white, and crude autumn night white filled the streets. Because this drug had aphrodisiac effects, much of it was sold as a tie-in in the pleasure district. Brothels that sold autumn night white all hung white flower-shaped lanterns outside their doors as signs. Refined autumn night white, meanwhile, was an extremely rare product. The common saying about it was that autumn white is worth its weight in gold. The sheer luck among the misfortune was that what Yan Xiaohan had encountered in Shishan village was only the village's crude autumn night white. There had been many impurities when it had burned, and the dose hadn't been very large. If he'd really had the terrible luck to run into a refined white dew powder, having been locked in that room for so long, never mind getting up to seek medical treatment, he would probably be a husk of himself by now. The deeper the two of them went into the town, the more frightening scenes they beheld. The case of the Jinwu Guard in the capital had put everyone in a state of anxiety. The Feilong Guard had strenuously investigated white dew powder, doing their best to turn Qingshu Temple upside down. But in Kuangfang town alone, as Fushen and Yan Xiaohan walked, they saw no fewer than 10 pleasure houses with flower lanterns hanging at their door, never mind the countless instances of homemade autumn night white being illicitly traded among the people. In a street separated only by a wall from the twittering of orioles and swallows, the gold powder and red sleeves, there was even an unkempt beggar with festering sores on his body, still clasping an opium pipe, unwilling to let it go. Wow. That's pretty bad. Like, that's awful. The scene was both extravagant and enchanting, and also inexplicably bleak and strange. The sight of it made Fushen bristle. Bewildered, he said, "It's just bizarre. Is it really worth ruining yourself like this for the sake of some lousy drug?" Under cover of his sleeves, Yan Xiaohan squeezed his hand and said, "You haven't taken the drug, so you can be reasonable about it now. There is so much bitterness in a human life. Once they have experienced bliss, naturally it's hard to endure the pain and difficulty of the human world again." Fu Shen, rather displeased, said, "So what about you? Are you also planning to leave the mortal world and ascend to heaven?" "No." Yan Xiaohan turned and looked at him. His gaze was world and ascend to heaven? "No." Yan Xiaohan turned and looked at him. His gaze was tender and steady. With a smile, he said, "The greatest bliss I have known in my life was when I knew that you loved me too." Fu Shen said, "That's all you have to say for yourself. Let's go." Such a fucking tsundere. Like an evil despot who had been teased by a woman of good family, he shook off his hand and slithered away. Shortly, he stopped up ahead, waiting for Yan Xiaohan to slowly catch up, and once again took his hand. That night, the two of them ate and bathed. Everything was as usual. Yan Xiaohan's condition remained stable. There were no signs of the craving acting up. Fu Shen uneasily asked him about it several times. This was his first time dealing with such a thing. Although his expression looked calm, he couldn't avoid feeling anxious. Seeing him shifting around as if there were nails under his ass, Yan Xiaohan simply pulled him into his arms and held him. "Weren't you the one who told me not to be scared? Why are you in such a panic now?" "Isn't it obvious?" said Fu Shen. "I'm scared too." "Scared of what?" said Yan Xiaohan. "Scared I won't be able to satisfy you," Fu Shen said sarcastically. Yan Xiaohan buried his face against the side of his neck. There was muffled laughter. He laughed and laughed, then suddenly exclaimed softly. Fu Shen immediately said, "What is it?" "Nothing. Don't be nervous." Yan Xiaohan took his hand and pressed it against his chest, letting him feel his slowly quickening heartbeat. "It's acting up." "Ah, It's still tolerable. I love my book opened. It's acting up. It's still tolerable. But soon he could no longer stand it. Following the intense throbbing, an itching pain like ant bites emerged where his heart was, then spread throughout his body. Yan Xiaohan's arms and legs began to tremble uncontrollably. His muscles twitched. His body pinched forward involuntarily and was deftly caught by Fu Shen. He felt the person in his arms shaking incessantly and quietly asked, "What do you feel now?" Yan Xiaohan hugged him as if clinging to his last hope for survival. His teeth were chattering. Indistinctly he said, "Cold." Fu Shen kept one arm around him while the other hand wandered tantalizingly over his whole body. Like a dragonfly skimming the water, his fingertips brushed the nape of his neck, his waist, and other sensitive areas, then burrowed into the lapels of his robe, lingering over the clammy skin. Dense kisses fell on Yan Xiaohan's neck and ears. He seemed to be comforting, yet also enticing. In an erotic, husky voice, he said into his ear, "It's all right. I'll warm you up soon." Enticing. In an erotic, husky voice, he said into his ear, "It's all right. I'll warm you up soon." The kisses had changed in nature at some point, poignantly blazing into a prairie fire, burning so hard that his palms were scalding hot, his blood boiling. The assault on his mouth was dizzying, as if he were being immersed in a hot spring with steam curling up. An inexpressible warmth rose from the bottom of his heart. Yan Xiaohan had been right. The traces left in his body by the autumn night white, in fact, couldn't compare to the obsession Fu Shen had carved into his bones over the past 7 years. Oh, I love these two. Like, they are so down bad for each other. Fu Shen had lit a cluster of flames in his belly, flourishing as they burned, but he couldn't leave it at that. His calloused hands, neither slender nor soft, but unusually clever, stroked all the acupoints on Yan Xiaohan's body, one by one, rubbing with moderate force, easing his stiff muscles like a massage. The soothing pleasure was like a few drops of timely rain falling during all-consuming scorching thirst. Though it wasn't enough to extinguish the pain, it let him keep hanging on. When he wasn't so tense and had relaxed slightly, Fu Shen grabbed a pillow and put it under him. He had meant to have Yan Xiaohan lean against the head of the bed, but instead Yan Xiaohan kept hugging him, unwilling to let go, so Fu Shen could only laugh helplessly, doing his belt while he teased. "So clingy. Do you have to be holding me?" Accompanying the kisses and whispers that lingered bone deep, those hands that held swords and reins that had been stained with blood and with the harsh weather of the north, easily lifted him up to the clouds. The insistent restlessness temporarily eased because of this bit of sweetness. Yan Xiaohan's panting breaths calmed. With difficulty, he found a drop of clarity. Remembering what the old doctor had said about giving up sweets, he felt that in fact there was some sense in it, but it would depend on the person. If he had done it himself, the effects certainly... I am sorry. The effects certainly wouldn't have been as striking as Fu Shen doing it. But Fu Shen suddenly released him and turned to search outside the bed. He stuffed some incense into the incense burner by the bed. Yan Xiaohan, eyes fixed on his movements, asked half a beat late, "What did you put in there?" "Just a bit of harmless aphrodisiac." Fu Shen's "I called it!" curled, his overly cold handsomeness softened by the smile, becoming an even more enchanting attraction than the faint fragrance. The gauze bed curtains floated down gently. He slowly opened his own clothing and drew close to kiss Yan Xiaohan's lowered eyelids. "Come on. This time I'll give you something sweeter." The incense curled up around them. Only half the incense burner finally go out. Yan Xiaohan turned and embraced Fu Shen, who was fast asleep from exhaustion, and pressed a kiss to his slightly furrowed brows. His heart was filled with many emotions. He had thought that the old doctor's remedy was only a psychological comfort. He hadn't thought that the Lord Marquis would be able to come up with so many tricks and artifices to alleviate his addiction. I feel like we're going through our chapters pretty quickly today. Chapter 53. It was said that when an addiction to autumn night white formed, the first 3 days were the most dangerous and difficult. Yan Xiaohan had believed the old doctor's horror stories and had prepared himself to walk up a mountain of knives and be dropped into a pot of boiling oil, not expecting that with an omnipotent Marquis of Jinning at his side, the memories that ought to have been grim and frightening would be enveloped in sweetness, not seeming all that painful. It was only that when the cravings flared up, he became muddled. Though he had repeatedly admonished himself ahead of time not to make excessive demands. More often than not, when his head cleared, he would find that Fu Shen was already spent from the exertion. After a few days, Yan Xiaohan felt the condition of being insensitive to all outside things and in total chaos slowly recede. So he brought up wanting to return to the Fox Immortal Temple and Shishan village to have a look. Fu Shen was sleeping until mid-morning every day now and drinking comprehensive restorative broth like water. Hearing him, he languidly said, "What did you promise me before? You've forgotten it in the blink of an eye." Yan Xiaohan pursed his lips. "The sooner we take care of it, the sooner we can leave. It can't be put off forever." Fu Shen scoffed and reached out to take hold of his chin. "Don't act like I've been bullying you. Who's the pathetic act for?" Yan Xiaohan grabbed his hand, brought it to his lips, and kissed it. Confidently he said, "For whoever's heart aches watching it." Fu Shen said, "I spoil you." Yan Xiaohan wasn't in a hurry, and he didn't argue. He only watched him, gentle and soft as water. Fu Shen wasn't worried about him wrangling. What he was worried about was him using his beauty as an enhancement, an enticement, and especially that distinctive flavor of the sickly beauty. He couldn't keep up his cold attitude for long. Relenting, he said, "Fine, fine. If you want to, we'll go. It's all up to you." The proud words, "Who has the final word in this house?" had been resoundingly spoken. But now this master of the house had drunk his prestige down along with the restorative broth. Shishan village was close to the mountains and the water. It ought to have been a paradise, carefree and peaceful, with scenes out of a painting. Who would have thought that so many dark secrets would be hidden in this village with hardly more than 100 residents? The villagers here were very guarded against outsiders, and Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen were too noticeable. Neither of them were skilled in disguise. They could only squat in a little forest on the hill behind the village, observing from a distance across the river. The two of them waited from nightfall to sunset, watching a whole day's worth of women washing rice, and apart from 2 turtle doves Fu Shen brought down with stones out of boredom, they came up with nothing. "This won't do, Lord Yan," Fu Shen said. "We could squat here until we died without seeing anything. Why don't I just go down and grab someone for you to have a go at interrogating?" Yan Xiaohan didn't answer. He seemed to be lost in thought. Fu Shen reached out and patted him on the arm. "Mengui?" Hmm? He seemed to have been abruptly pulled back from some scene. His vague gaze collected into a single thread. He focused and said, "What did you say?" Fu Shen wasn't taking anything else seriously, only keeping a close watch on him. He acutely noticed that something was off about Yan Xiaohan and grabbed his wrist to check his pulse. What's wrong? Yan Xiaohan, for some reason, dodged him. Fu Shen was used to cooperation from him. When he came up empty, even if there was nothing wrong to begin with, there was instantly something wrong now. What are you hiding from me? Give me your hand. Let me see. The hand hidden beneath Yan Xiaohan's sleeve was trembling uncontrollably, and it was intensifying. Enduring it, he said. It's all right. All right, my ass, Fu Shen said coldly. You're shaking like chaff. You're still lying through your teeth. He silently recited, He's sick. Don't squabble with him 3 times, suppressing his anger. It's the cravings flaring up again, isn't it? Yan Xiaohan's face was pale. He didn't deny it. Fu Shen looked around, but saw that the trees were luxurious, and there was dusk all around. The whole forest was quiet, without a trace of human speech. There was only the breeze and the chirping of birds. He blushed in spite of himself. Sighing, he said, You really know how to choose a spot. Yan Xiaohan absolutely couldn't imagine Fu Shen, with his upbringing and background, condescending to do such a thing out in the wilderness. On hearing the intention revealed by his words, he quickly said, No way, don't mess around. Fu Shen asked, Can you hold out until we get back to the county town? Perhaps it was the craving making mischief, and perhaps it was his remorse and self-reproach had lately accumulated almost to the limit of what he could contain. Yan Xiaohan's thoughts took a wrong turn somewhere. He retreated further and dully said, Jing Yuan, you don't have to force yourself. This gesture of retreat was more injurious than anything he could have said. Fu Shen nearly lost his temper with him. Force myself, he repeated. Oh, very well. He pointed at Yan Xiaohan and gave several bitter laughs. I keep coming up with new ways to treat your illness, and you keep coming up with new ways to annoy me. Is that it? Fu Shen irritably paced a little ways back and forth along the forest path, restraining himself again and again, but finally he couldn't keep it up any longer and roared furiously. Yan Mengui, I'd love nothing better than to hold you in both hands and treat you like a treasure. And when it comes down to it, you think of that as forcing myself? Was your conscience eaten by dogs? He was a person who had come off the battlefield. When he was truly angry, there seemed to be blood and the cold gleam of weaponry in his voice. A grandeur like Mount Tai bore down. But when he hurled this reprimand full in the face at Yan Xiaohan, the latter felt a bit of sickly ease. This is unfair to him, he thought. He knew that Fu Shen loved him, but ordinary pampering and indulgence was one thing, and the eldest young master, who had never done his own laundry, lowering himself to yield to him, was another. Husband and wife were birds in the forest, each flying their own way when disaster befell. There was nothing wrong with this saying to begin with. When a person had fallen into an abyss, did he really have to drag along another person who had sunk with him in order for his love to be called as deep as the sea? When he had finished yelling, Fu Shen's anger had yet to disperse, but his mind had calmed down. Yan Xiaohan's eyes were misty and uncertain, seeming to contain both sadness and happiness. Fu Shen knew that he was being impacted by the drug to some extent, that when he was in low spirits, feelings of hatred and loathing would grow as rampantly as poisonous weeds. Fu Shen not only had to satisfy his body's desires, he also had to keep a constant watch on his changing moods. The only thing he didn't understand was, why did Yan Xiaohan always think of himself as a burden? When he thought this, he asked the question aloud. Yan Xiaohan seemed not to have expected him to be so direct. He froze for a moment and then said, I was poisoned because of my own carelessness, but it led you to have to tax your ingenuity. Your legs haven't healed yet. You ought to have been in the capital recuperating, but instead you're running around all over the place for my sake. It's because I can't take care of you properly. Instead, I've become a burden on you again and again. Fu Shen picked up. According to your own reasoning, no one owes anyone. So why do you have to take care of me properly? Yan Chao Han, do you think I married you for your great wealth or for your lofty position of upper third rank official? He said with a sneer. Here's how it should be. Clearly, as a cripple without position or power, I'm the one who ought to be a burden on you, right? Yan Chao Han couldn't stand to hear him say the word cripple. All his thoughts halted for a while. He said seriously, Don't talk nonsense. It was like a ladleful of water poured over a fire. Fu Shen's sneer stiffened on his face. He was simply at his wit's end. You... His anger was getting to be a little too much for him. He wanted to string Yan Chao-han up and give him a beating, clear his head a little. Holding back, he said, Forget it. Don't talk about these useless things. Let's see to your cravings first. But Yan Chao-han stood still, maintaining his stubborn, you can talk yourself blue in the face, I'm going to stand my ground attitude. It's all right. I'll deal with it myself, and it will pass. This is an unsuitable place. Fu Shen suddenly said, Meng Gui, the day you were drugged, do you still remember what you were doing when I found you? For some reason, his tone had instantly softened. It could even be called kindly. Yan Chao-han knit his brows and pondered briefly. He really couldn't remember. He shook his head. I remember. Every time I've closed my eyes these past few days, it's been the only thing I could see. I might not be able to forget it for the rest of my life. Fu Shen lowered his eyelids. I was still Ren Miao at the time. As soon as I came near you, you pulled out a small knife and tried to stab your own arm. Tell me the truth. If it really had been someone else that day, what would you have done? Yan Chao-han looked into his eyes. The answer was practically self-evident. That knife would have gone right in. Fu Shen walked up to him and gently stroked his face, as if wiping away non-existent tear stains. Whose sake do you think I came all this way here for? I've said this so many times I'm about to get calluses on my lips. Ming Gui, I haven't even had time to love you. How could I think you were a burden? If you absolutely need a reason, he said, his time to love you. How could I think you were a burden? If you absolutely need a reason, he said, his tone bantering, but his manner exceedingly solemn. If you can preserve your chastity for me, then I can let you do whatever you please, give you whatever you want. Do you understand? Even being dosed with autumn night white, Yan Chao-han had felt that a big hole had opened in his heart, connected to an abyss. In that abyss lived all his fantasies, obsessions, and desires. It seemed that it could never be satisfied. When he was lucid, he can control himself, but when he wasn't lucid, he couldn't distinguish whether this was a loss of control brought about by the drug, or his own hideous true colors. But now, Fu Shen had jumped into that abyss with righteous purpose, and no thought of looking back, and what met him wasn't the bite of a vicious beast, but a wounded yet slowly healing heart. Yan Chao-han finally realized that his satisfaction did not lie in the moment he could spread his wings and keep Fu Shen safe in his embrace, but in the moment when, just as he was about to stumble and fall, a pair of hands reached out of nowhere to hold him up. He bowed slightly and picked Fu Shen up. He pressed him against the nearest tree and stopped his parched mouth. A cool breeze blew by. The leaves rustled. When night had completely fallen, two immaculately dressed men at last walked out of the small forest. One of them was clearly faltering in his stride, shaking once for every 3 steps. The other man couldn't stand to watch this. He picked him up and placed him on horseback. Did they bring a horse? I guess they brought a horse. Okay. The two of them were just about to leave when an uproar suddenly came from Shishan village in the distance. A woman's wails pierced the night sky. Lamps lit up in many houses, one after another. A number of people opened their windows and raised their voices to ask, "That's Tian Chang's missus. What's happened?" Fortunately, it was already late and the villagers had shut up their houses. They had to yell to talk so the two people on the slope could also get the gist of what they were saying. Someone answered, "Tian Chang's dying. He has to be brought to the memorial hall and set off tomorrow." The woman gave a heartrending wail. "Everyone, aunts and uncles, he can still be saved. I'll take him to town to see a doctor. Don't take him to the memorial hall. I'm begging you." A gruff-voiced man said loudly, "You can't. You can't go to the county town. Are you going to drag down the whole village for one person's sake?" Fu Shen and Yan Xiaohan's eyes met without prearrangement. There really was something fishy going on in this Shishan village. How could it drag down the whole village if a sick man was taken to the county town to see a doctor? An ominous premonition suddenly flitted through Fu Shen's mind. Could it be plague? We seriously, we are trucking it tonight. Yeah. We are speeding along. Chapter 54. After the sick man was brought to the memorial hall, quiet was restored to Shishan village. Running the risk of being chased and bitten by all the village's dogs, Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen snuck into a courtyard and spent ages eavesdropping, putting together a rough sequence of cause and effect. It was said that the sick man had been infected with a foul disease that couldn't be treated. Everyone thought that this was an inauspicious omen, and they had to hold a sacrificial ceremony by the river tomorrow to drive out evil. Fu Shen's waist was sore and his back hurt. He was tired and sleepy. He almost didn't hold out. He staggered forward. Yan Xiaohan opened his arms and caught him in an embrace, and simply didn't trouble him to walk for himself again. He carried him right out of the village. The two of them spurred their horse and returned to town and asked a waiter at the inn for hot water and food. When they had washed themselves clean and eaten their fill, General Fu lay in bed resting his waist, while Lord Yan very obediently and conscientiously sat on the bedside and pulled his legs over his own knees to massage and relax them. "What kind of plague do you think this foul disease is?" Fu Shen asked. "If there really is a plague, this village is really being too bold. Once the scope of the disease expands, one village dying off will be the least of it. Concealing it and not reporting it is only natural." Yan Xiaohan rolled up Fu Shen's pant legs and pressed on the acupoints on his calves. "Think about it. The local officials won't even report to the court that autumn night white is spreading unchecked in his jurisdiction. If he found out that a strange illness suspected of being plague had appeared time and again in Shishan village, what would he do?" Fu Shen raised his eyebrows. Yan Xiaohan said, "Better to kill by mistake than to let anything get away. Regardless of whether it is or isn't plague, only by annihilating it all can future troubles be eliminated forever." I don't know why I had trouble with annihilating. Oh my goodness. The villagers all knew that if this gets out, their whole town might not get out alive. That's why they're desperately covering it up, not daring to report it to the authorities. Fu Shen smacked the bed. What kind of rotten official is this? It's a disgrace. Yan Xiaohan smiled without speaking. Fu Shen shot him a sideways glance. Hey, how strange. Where have your sulks and childish temper gone today? For Yan Xiaohan to be able to guess the local official's line of thought at once, he himself couldn't be particularly upright. If Fu Shen had said something like this before, he couldn't have helped being slightly stung. Now, however, it was as if he really had set down many years of ill feelings, becoming open and candid, with rather the attitude of being indifferent to favor or humiliation. Smiling, he said, If I go into another sulk, will you be able to take it? It was as if Fu Shen had built an incomparably steadfast wall in his heart. He knew that he possessed all of this man's love and tolerance, enough to make him look down on all creation in his vicinity. Once a person had confidence, naturally he could straighten his back and raise his head, no longer be constrained by gains and losses. Amazing. The muscles of Fu Shen's legs tensed instantly. Hey, where's that hand going? Relax, Yan Xiaohan said good-naturedly. Why squeeze your legs together so tightly? Open them up a little. I'm not doing anything. Aren't your legs sore? I'm giving you a massage. Fu Shen was rendered speechless by his flirting. He simply put him out of sight and out of mind, closing his eyes and letting him get on with it. In his mind, he slowly organized the events of recent days. First, there had been the rapid string of homicides in the capital, then the grain tax revenue falling short in Jinchu, Yan Xiaohan being dosed in Xishan village, the rampant spread of autumn night white in Kuangfang County. The crux of all these events lay with the previously unheard of autumn night white. The questions they needed to find answers to now were this. First, what secret was Xishan village hiding? Second, was the shortfall of tax revenue in Jinshu connected to the catastrophic spread of autumn night white? Third, by what channel had autumn night white entered Jinshu? And had it been deliberately introduced or grown naturally? Was autumn night white blooming everywhere, a situation limited or Was autumn night white blooming everywhere, a situation limited to the area of Jinshu, or had it spread to other places? I think they forgot a comma. At the outset, Fu Shen had only had a surge of excitement and wanted to discreetly accompany Yan Xiaohan while he carried out his mission. He hadn't expected... Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. He hadn't expected them to run into a vexing problem that would make it difficult for him to stay out of it, even if he had wanted to. He couldn't tell whether he had purely picked up some bad luck, or whether he had been destined from birth for a hard life. As he thought this, sleepiness gradually arose, and without noticing it, Fu Shen fell deeply asleep. Yan Xiaohan heard his breaths gradually become slow and even, then softly put his legs back onto the bed and pulled up the quilt to cover him. He was just about to straighten up and go wash his hands, but before he could straighten, Fu Shen woke up. He couldn't have been called entirely awake. He hadn't even fully opened his eyes. Fu Shen seemed to be in a daze, but he clearly knew that he was leaving. He reached a hand out from under the quilt. Where are you going? Yan Xiaohan took his hand and put it back under the quilt. He wanted to laugh a little, and at the same time his heart was impossibly soft. He bent down to kiss the center of his brow and softly said, Sleep. I'm gonna go wash my hands. Hearing this, Fu Shen closed his eyes again, but this time he wasn't asleep. Shortly, the lamp in the room was extinguished and the curtains were pulled down. In the dark came the rustling of fabric, followed by the bed beside him dipping slightly. Yan Xiaohan got into bed and very gently pulled him into his arms. Fu Shen, his eyes closed, drew a fingertip along the back of his hand and heard Yan Xiaohan quietly sigh into his ear and say, "You wake at the slightest noise. You're going to overtax your nerves like this." Body heat and scent were the best soporifics. So that's sleep aids. Fu Shen's sleepiness surged up once again. This time, not even Yan Xiaohan chattering in his ear could disturb him. He rolled over, put a hand on Yan Xiaohan's waist, rather carelessly slapped him a couple of times, and indistinctly said, "Sleep." Yan Xiaohan laughed in spite of himself. He thought to himself, how could this person be like a child? Started searching for his mother as soon as he opened his eyes. Would make a fuss if she left. He pulled the quilt higher, covering their shoulders, and quietly answered, "Yes, let's sleep." The next morning, the two of them once again went up the mountain behind Shishan village. Today, there was a woman by the river, continuously wiping away tears. The women around her came up, one after another, to comfort her. Presumably, this was the sorrowfully weeping Tiang Cheng's missus from last night. Fu Shen had recovered his energy today. He was spinning that club of his in his hand. "Keep an eye on her and lend a hand when the need arises. Perhaps we can get some truth out of her." Yan Xiaohan said, "Yes, sir." General Fu's club nearly slipped from his hand and went flying. I think he likes being called sir by his husband. The day passed quickly. The sun sank into the west, the weary birds returned to the forest, and the villagers hard at work in the fields trickled back home. Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen stood halfway up the mountain, perfectly able to overlook the whole village. The scene from the other night repeated itself. First, a number of lights slid up in the direction of the memorial hall. Then everyone left their houses, carrying lanterns, and gradually congregated into a band of light that zigzagged forward along the village's little street, heading towards the river. By the lantern light, a festooned cart could faintly be seen among the crowd. A white-clothed man, who may have been dead or alive, lay in the cart. The scene sent a chill up Yan Xiaohan's spine, as he remembered the rather strange procession he had seen in the memorial hall the other day, which had seemed like a funeral. Warmth suddenly came from the back of his hand. Fu Shen was holding his hand. Seeming absent-minded, he casually said, "Don't be scared." That night, a person had charged alone into the depths of the village and brought him out of the nightmare, taking him into a gentle romantic dream. Yan Xiaohan quietly rotated his hand and laced their fingers together. "Right. I'm not scared." Fu Shen hissed as if he had a toothache. The two of them had done so many intimate things, but he was stung by this manner of holding hands like small children. But out of some unknown considerations, he didn't struggle free. He let Yan Xiaohan hold his hand like this until the villagers had come to the riverbank, placed the festooned cart in an empty space by the river, and laid out an offering of fruit. A gray-bearded elder walked out of the crowd. First, he solemnly kowtowed 3 times in the direction of the rapid river. Then, trembling, he took a yellow talisman from his sleeve, recited an incantation, then placed the yellow talisman over an incense candle and lit it on fire. When the talisman had turned into a handful of flying ashes, he rang a bell and began to pray in a loud voice. Fu Shen heard him vaguely. The prayer seemed to be requesting that some deity be generous, send the sinner beyond, bless the village with favorable weather, and keep a plague from forming. Fu Shen said in astonishment, "The current dynasty abolished live sacrifices to the river god long ago, and instituted sacrifices to the water official and the king dragon, or the dragon king. How can these ignorant people still dare sacrifice people to the river? He was speaking of the previous dynasty's old custom. Previously, whenever there were rains and floods, the common people would think that the river god was angry, could only be calmed with a sacrifice. A good portion of them used pigs, sheep, and other domestic animals. Furthermore, there were those that used virgin boys and girls, or even beautiful young women, as sacrifices. Countless innocent women and children had met their deaths in this way. When the current dynasty had been established, its first emperor had commanded the abolition of the old custom. All the river god temples were knocked down, and the live sacrifices were absolutely prohibited. Common practices had been completely remade. Who would have thought that today, hundreds of years later, in this remote place, the nightmare would reappear, past events be reenacted? Yan Xiaohan held him back. Wait, don't get frantic. The river god is only concerned with favorable weather. I've never heard that he also concerns himself with plague. Also, they say that the old sacrificial practices used virgin boys and girls for sacrificial objects. The person in that cart seems to be a man. This isn't necessarily a sacrifice to the river god. For now, let's watch and see what happens. See what he's going to do next. When the old man had finished reciting the prayer, two firmly covered up men lifted the white-clothed person off the cart. They pulled up several strands of rope and bound him hand and foot. Instantly, a woman among the crowd gave a mournful, heart-rending wail. Ignoring the crowd holding her back, she threw herself forward to tear at the two men. "Let me die! Let me die in his place!" The village head indicated for several women to come forward and pull her away. The woman collapsed entirely and lay prostrate on the ground, sobbing and cursing, but all the villagers seemed to be turning a deaf ear on it. The two men lifted the white-clothed person and threw him into the racing river. Following an aged and raspy, "A gift to the true immortal," everyone knelt in unison and devoutly kowtowed thrice in the direction of the river. Fu Shen's expression was grim. With his eyesight, he could even see that when that man had been thrown into the river, his hands and feet had still been constantly struggling. He quietly said, "This river flows into the little lake behind the Fox Immortal Temple. Let's go there and look for him. We might still be able to save him. Come on." But Yan Xiaohan said, "If the husband dies, the wife might not live through the night. I'll go fish him out of the lake, and you follow her. If it's too late to save her husband, we still need a living witness." Fu Shen muttered to himself briefly. He seemed rather uneasy. Yan Xiaohan knew what he was worried about and soothingly said, "Don't worry, I'm a decent swimmer, and if anything goes wrong, I'll be sure to save myself. I'm not about to risk my life for the sake of a stranger." "You must be careful. I couldn't take a repeat of that bolt out of the blue last time." From his sleeve, Fu Shen took out the small knife Yan Xiaohan had attempted to injure himself with and tossed it to him. He said, "I'll bring that woman to the Fox Immortal Temple." Yan Xiaohan took the knife and twisted it through his fingers as if doing a trick. He leapt onto his horse and laughed into the wind. In the dim night, his face seemed to be glowing. "Fine. Then Fine. Then we'll be seeing each other at the Fox Immortal Temple." Was the last chapter? No, you have two. Chapter 55. After several days away from it, the Fox Immortal Temple still stood on the slope of a hill, the same as before, only looking more debilitated, or dilapidated. Similar meaning. In the night, it was like a ruin. The river, meanwhile, flowed behind the hill into a broad body of water. There was no wind or rain tonight. The moonlight was bright. The rocks on the shore of the lake were craggy, and the lake was calm and waveless, giving off an indescribable feeling of grim cold. Yan Xiaohan dismounted and stood still beside the lake for a long time, watching the dark blue lake and letting his mind wander. Finally, he realized what was strange about this place. When it had been pouring rain that night, they hadn't approached the lake to look at it closely. And Prince Qi and Yan Xiaohan, along with the whole party, were all northerners, not very familiar with the scenery of the south. So they hadn't noticed that something was off. This lake was located in the countryside, with running water flowing into it, but not a blade of grass grew beside it. There were no reeds or aquatic plants, no water birds perching. There was even very few fish and shrimp. The whole lake was like a pond of stagnant water without a drip of vitality. And connecting that to what the villagers had done tonight, Yan Xiaohan suddenly came up with a frightening guess. Soon, the sound of splashing came from the water. Yan Xiaohan looked closely. As expected, there was a white figure bobbing in the middle of the river. The Shishan villagers lived next to the water. They were all excellent swimmers, perhaps because his wife had charged in midway to obstruct the proceedings. The ropes holding the man hadn't been tied tightly. They had loosened somewhat after entering the water, which had kept him from drowning up to now. He was holding on with a single breath, floating towards the lake along with the water. Yan Xiaohan took off his outer robe and dove into the water, unburdened. He swam all the way out into the center of the river, using the blades between his fingers to cut several ropes, then knocked out the man still struggling wildly with a punch and dragged him behind himself, floating in the water, and swam for shore. You kind of just made more dead weight for yourself. Like, I mean, yeah, he might be struggling, but he also can partially swim. But he had been just in time. While the man had inhaled water, he was still breathing. Yan Xiaohan tossed him onto the shore, seeing that he was only going to be coughing up water for a while, without the strength to run away. He turned and dove back into the water and swam towards the lake. It was already well into the night and even darker in the water. Yan Xiaohan could only see clearly about a foot away. He held his breath and sank down, feeling the flowing rhythm of the river when it converged with the lake and continued prodding in the direction of the depths at the center of the lake. He swam and swam, then felt that he seemed to have touched something. At first, he thought it was a fish. Then the thing kept poking him from behind, this way and that. He reached behind impatiently to grab it. The sensation was soft and slippery. He pulled it close to take a look. It was white as a young lotus root and branched out at the end. It was a human hand. He'd just come here and already he was holding hands with one of the lake's tenants. Lord Yan nearly passed out on the spot. He almost thought that this craving was acting up and he was hallucinating again. He spat out a stream of bubbles, feeling that after the scare he'd just had, the air in his mouth wasn't enough to sustain himself through another fright. So he decisively gave up on it. He kicked in the water, turned over, and swam upward. Shortly, a big spray of water bloomed on the lake as Yan Xiaohan broke through. As soon as he let out a breath, he heard the clap of horses' hooves from the shore. Fu Shen didn't wait for the horse to come to a full stop. He left off the horse and quickly walked over to the lake shore. Mengui! Yan Xiaohan waved at him, showing that he was all right, then swam back from the lake into the river to rinse himself repeatedly in the clean water. He didn't have an obsession with cleanliness, but no one who had spent this long flopping around soaked in coarse water could well have avoided feeling revolted. Fu Shen followed him, going around the lake shore to the riverside. He reached out to pull out the sopping wet Yan Xiaohan. He snatched up his outer robe and covered himself with it. Bewildered, he said, "What are you doing messing around in the lake?" Yan Xiaohan clung to his hands. "I'm not telling you. You won't let me hold your hand." Fu Shen laughed disapprovingly. "It's always something with you." The wind was strong by the water, and Yan Xiaohan was soaking wet. With this wind blowing on him on top of the scene at the bottom of the lake just now, all the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He shivered. Fu Shen, seeing this, took off his own outer robe and gave it to him. Unexpectedly, Yan Xiaohan still had a death grip on him, unwilling to let go. Fu Shen struggled and couldn't get free. Exasperated, he said, "Still not letting go?" "No." Shivering, Yan Xiaohan said stubbornly, smiling, "I'm very scared. I need the Lord Marquis to give me a hug." Just thinking about it, like at the depth of a lake, depending on how long it would be. This is just based on like all the murder mystery crime shows watching. Like, wouldn't the bodies float? Like buoyancy aspect, like I'm probably thinking really dumb questions, but like, or if not float, like it must have been one of the newer people's sacrifices, just because like bodies or flesh itself like composes really quickly in water. So like he would have squished. That's kind of gross to think about, but like how whole would this hand still be? All right, tangent over. Fu Shen looked at the trembling, poor little boy with too many thoughts to express. "I hope you're scared to death." Despite this, he still reached out to embrace Yan Xiaohan, shielding him from the wind with his own body. The two of them left this lake shore as if glued together and went to look at the place where their horses were tied up. There was an unconscious woman in mourning garb laying face down on the horse's back. Yan Xiaohan shot a glance at the man he had knocked out, then turned his face away, pretending he hadn't noticed the rough methods identical to his. "Move them into the Fox Immortal's temple," he proposed. They each carried one of the people into the Fox Immortal temple. Fu Shen held some splintered wood in the backyard and built a fire, pressing Yan Xiaohan down in front of it to dry out. Yan Xiaohan told him a bit of what he had seen at the bottom of the lake, originally intending to scare him, not expecting that Fu Shen's tolerance would be much higher than his. Hearing about it, he only frowned. "According to the villagers' habit, I'm afraid there won't be just one corpse at the bottom of the lake. How many people are there in the village? How could they afford to throw so many people away?" Yan Xiaohan said, "It can't have started too long ago. My guess is that it may have been roughly around the time white dew powder spread in the capital." "Be more precise," said Fu Shen. "First," said Yan Xiaohan, "Taoist Chunyang entered the capital and took up lodging at Qingshu Temple roughly 3.5 years ago, or in other words, the 22nd year of Yun Tai. Second, the shortfall of tax revenues in Jinshu. These were accounts that ought to have been settled in winter of last year, but they've been pushed back to this spring. The reduced yield was caused by the proliferation of autumn night white, prior to the autumn of the 25th year of Yuntai at least. Autumn night white has already appeared here." Fu Shen said, "How are the grain taxes and autumn night white connected? Your second point seems a little arbitrary, Yan Xiaohan explained. While Jinchu doesn't contribute as heavily to revenue as places like Jiangning and Jiangxi, last year there was neither drought nor flood nor man-made calamity of war here, but the grain taxes went down by 20% out of nowhere. That doesn't make sense. You saw it yourself in Guangfang County. It's easy to get addicted to Autumn Night White, and the price of it is high. Users often bring their families to ruin and become riddled with disease. Could this have resulted in a portion of farmers going bankrupt? Besides, Autumn Night White itself creates huge sudden profits. Supposing someone made a big profit off it and everyone else followed their example, left farming to plant Autumn Night White instead, this would also lead to the current situation. It would be easy to verify this point. Another time, we'll take a tour outside of Jingzhou City and see what's actually growing in the fields. Fu Shen nodded, indicating that he understood and that Yan Xiaohan could continue. Third, according to what Yi Siming said, white dew powder appeared in the capital around autumn and winter of last year. That was just after you were injured in Qingsha Gap, and His Majesty arranged a marriage for you and me. Taoist Chunyang had been lying low in the capital for years without acting. In order to take revenge on your behalf, just as the properties of Autumn Night White were proven in the south, he brought the drug to the capital. He paused and summarized. From the clues we have now, it appears that Autumn Night White first spread in the south, then was brought to the capital by Taoist Chunyang. I think there will be no objections to this. You're making assumptions again, said Fu Shen. According to your line of thought, Autumn Night White has existed all along, but those who had it kept it hidden and wouldn't bring it out. Later, at some juncture, it became popular in the area of Jingchu. It was brought by Taoist Chunyang into the capital to do harm. Since Autumn Night White is so profitable, why didn't they bring it out earlier and fill up all their coffers instead of clinging to their integrity and only using it after I was injured? I'm not making assumptions. Yan Xiaohan shook his head and reminded him. Jing Yuan, don't forget what we guessed at the beginning about the identity of the person behind this. Coming from someone else, holding a weapon and holding back from using it might be strange. But what if that person belonged to the Beiyuan cavalry? Absent profound hatred and resentment, being pushed past endurance, how could he turn the butcher's knife facing foreign enemies around and aim it at the empire that he had defended with his flesh and blood? Fu Shen could go to his death without perpetuating a traitorous attack like this, but former subordinates of the Beiyuan cavalry in fact might. Yan Xiaohan guessed that he would be feeling unhappy and spread his arms to put them around his shoulders. Fu Shen considered briefly, then said, There's something else that puzzles me. If Autumn Night White appeared in the south before it did in the north, then the juncture wasn't my injury, but some other prior event. This question stumped Yan Xiaohan. He frowned and muttered, Last summer. What happened that impacted the South? Their eyes met. A scene that had made a profound impression flashed simultaneously through their minds. Yan Xiaohan said, In the 6th month of last year, the two of us argued in the morning court assembly and were each docked half a year's salary by His Majesty. Fu Shen picked up. It was over the court planning to send army supervisors to all borders, and someone being flattering and saying that it would be most suitable to assign this work to your Feilong Guard. Past events were still clear in their mind, but they were like something from another lifetime. Who could have thought that the pair of enemies who had thrown the court into disarray with their arguing and would have loved to bash each other's head in with their ritual batons would now be cuddled up whispering sweet nothings in front of a fire in an abandoned temple? One could see that worldly events are indeed hard to predict. If you lived long enough, you might see any miracle. Yen, sh- wow, my brain just went poof. Yan Chouhan said, His Majesty's intention to control military power throughout the country isn't a recent thought. Though this attempt in summer was put down by your unreasonable nitpicking and couldn't be implemented, since this matter had been brought up in morning court, it was tantamount to a public proclamation telling the armed forces throughout the country to tuck their tails between their legs and behave. Fu Shen, dissatisfied, said, Hey, what are you talking about? Who's unreasonable nitpicking? This interruption of his broke off Yan Xiaohan's line of thought. Not sure whether to laugh or cry, he said. You won't admit it? Be reasonable. His Majesty's original intention was to send army supervisors from the capital admission everywhere. He only mentioned the Phelan Guard in passing, and you snatched it up and wouldn't let it go, and started pointing out my flaws. You don't call that unreasonable nitpicking? It was fortunate that Yan Xiaohan had been somewhat adaptable that day and had gone along with him in changing the perennial subject of how can these dogs at the Phelan Guard be bullying a loyal and upright man again, that had made the matter come to nothing amid the fuss. Who would have imagined that the Marquis of Jinning would change his attitude like flipping the pages of a book, and would now be stubbornly unwilling to acknowledge it? Fu Shen nodded, outwardly fierce but inwardly cowardly. Aiding villains in their crimes. Truly despicable. Yan Xiaohan mockingly returned the compliment, doing away with a person as soon as he gets the job done. Worse than a beast. The two of them were on the point of arguing again when a quiet whimper suddenly came from behind them. The two of them turned their heads in unison and saw that the woman they had tossed aside in a corner like a ragged sack move her arms and legs slightly and slowly wake up. Chapter 56. The woman woke up and opened her eyes. As soon as she saw Yan Xiaohan, she immediately cried out, You? Prince Qi's party had been rare guests to Shishan village. Almost the whole village had run over to get in on the fun that day, and Yan Xiaohan had particularly stood out among them, leaving an even deeper impression on the village men and village women. Therefore, even in her panic, the woman could still recognize him. She was scared nearly to tears. Shivering, she asked, Have you come to take revenge? It was the village head and the others who wanted to hurt you. We didn't know anything. Fu Shen idly stroked the fire with his club and put in a word. The way you're shivering, it doesn't look like you didn't know anything. While Fu Shen was handsome, his manner was too overwhelming. It was clear at a glance that he was a difficult person, that it didn't pay to offend. Yan Xiaohan's appearance, meanwhile, could fool people very well. As long as he didn't voluntarily tear through the illusion, he could put on a seamless appearance of gentleness and kindliness. Seeing that Fu Shen had stepped in to be the bad guy, Yan Xiaohan could only play the good guy. In a soothing tone, he said, I fished your husband out of the river. Don't be scared. I didn't come seeking vengeance. Only when he gave her the reminder did the woman's soul seem to return. She wiped her face with her sleeve and crawled over to hold up her husband, patting his back and clearing his nose and mouth. As she did, she remembered everything that had happened before she had been knocked out. She felt involuntary sadness welling up and burst into tears. Neither of the two watching said anything to stop her. They listened to her mournful crying in the silence. Or in silence. She had cried countless times between last night and today, standing by and watching as her husband had a sudden outbreak of the vile disease, was thrown into the river by the villagers. That night she had returned home and put a belt over a ceiling beam, ready to hang herself. Fortunately, Fu Shen had been watching her every move from the shadows. The crucial moment, he had stepped in to knock her out and take her away, not letting her succeed in her death-seeking. Perhaps because she had sensed kindness in their quiet waiting, at length the woman's crying generally stopped. Gradually stopped. Oh my good, we're going to start that paragraph over. Perhaps because she sensed kindness in their quiet waiting, at length the woman's crying gradually stopped. She raised her red eyes and nervously looked the two of them over, then knelt and prostrated herself before them. You have done me a great kindness that I am unable to repay. She's amiable to reason, then, Yan Xiaohan thought. He waved a hand. There's no need for this. It was a matter of the slightest effort. There are some things I want to ask you. All you need to do is answer with the truth. The woman said, I will tell you everything I know without reserve. I wouldn't dare to conceal anything from my benefactors. Having gone through this near-death experience, the woman had no further affection for Shishan village. She answered every question put to her, spilling all the village's secrets. There were over 100 households in Shishan village, many belonging to the Tian clan. The name of the man who had been thrown into the river was Tian Cheng. The woman's surname was Uo. O-U. Ooh. O-U? Oui? She came from another village and had moved here due to her marriage. We're going to hope that that's the only time her last name comes up. According to Miss Wu, Shishan village, surrounded by mountains and rivers, might not have been cut off from the world, but visitors from outside were still seldom seen. After about a year ago, autumn night white had begun to spread in the area of Jingchu. The younger son of one of the village families was studying in the county town and was lured by a classmate to the pleasure district to get an eye-opener. From curiosity, he had unwillingly picked up an addiction. And when he had gone home on vacation, he had shared autumn night white with his playmates of similar age. By the time his parents noticed, that younger son was already profoundly addicted. It would have been practically impossible for him to break the habit. That family had some minor assets, and they had an exceptional particularity for this younger son. At first, they didn't take autumn night white seriously. They put it about that at worst they could buy enough of the drug for him to take for the rest of his life. But as the addiction deepened, the drug taker's demand for autumn night white increased. Even Kuang Feng County Town, autumn night white was in short supply and great demand. The average family might well be unable to afford it, let alone a family of mere farmers. So it wasn't long before that family could no longer keep their younger son supplied. When the craving flared up, it was painful and unendurable. The younger son was so tormented that he became skin and bones. At last, he couldn't stand it. One rainy night, he ran out of the house and threw himself into the river. Though that was what everyone said, the villagers privately all spread the rumor that the youngest son hadn't killed himself, but that his family, truly unable to bear such a burden, had drowned him, then pushed his body into the river, pretending that he had died by throwing himself in. With this to serve as an example, apart from the kids who would come in contact with the drugs at the beginning, the other villagers didn't dare to touch autumn night white. But that didn't hinder people from casting greedy eyes on autumn night white's high price. They stealthily planted some in their front and backyards. The mishap had taken place last autumn. One day, a traveling Taoist priest came to the village. Encountering heavy rain on his way, he had nowhere to shelter, so he came to the village to stay the night. The villagers gave him a warm welcome and had him stay in an empty house in the village and brought food and drink to entertain him. In the middle of the night, a person in the village just happened to have a craving flare-up. The situation was very desperate and made a big stir, alerting everyone in the village. The Taoist priest was also startled awake and went out to see what was happening along with everyone else. He saw a person covered in blood rolling around on the ground in the rain, so he rushed over and pressed on some acupoints and knocked the person out, then called the villagers over to carry him home. The Taoist knew some pharmacology. He knew at a glance that these symptoms were caused by autumn night white, but the person's family had no money to buy the drug. Though the village had planted autumn night white, it would take time to process the drug. The village had done the Taoist a kindness. He felt compassion. He went back inside and tinkered with something. When he came out, he had a paper bag containing fine brown powder. He told them to take it and use it as a temporary substitute. The Taoist was entirely well-meaning, but since ancient times, do not expose your wealth to others while traveling, and a treasure will bring you to grief had always been lessons learned in blood. There were people in the village who could judge the quality of goods. They recognized that this was the almost impossible to purchase refined white dew powder. At the time, autumn white is worth its weight in gold was already a saying in Guangfang County. Seeing that the Taoist had come up with an ounce of autumn night white at once, they were certain that he would have more hidden on him. These people got evil designs into their heads at the prospect of riches. When everyone had returned home and peacefully fallen asleep, they snuck into the place where the Taoist was staying and stabbed him to death. Hearing this, Fu Shen must have suddenly remembered something. His right hand shook suddenly. Yan Xiaohan calmly took his hand. The villagers searched the Taoist and came up with a chunk of autumn night white the size of a woman's fist, its color pure and clear like amber. One corner of it was stained with blood, giving it a greater peculiar beauty. The price of this chunk of autumn night white would surpass an equivalent weight in gold. The people rejoiced and hid it, then carried the Taoist's corpse out of the village under the cover of night and dropped it into the river. An itinerant Taoist priest, without family or possession, no one would notice if he disappeared. That night, in the dark, the Shishan villagers listened in silence to the sound of knives and axes falling, blood splattering everywhere. They heard the killers shout and howl with laughter, but no one dared to speak to put a stop to it. That night, they were all people who couldn't be woken, feigning sleep. The river raced, carrying away the corpse of the victim of injustice. The heap of bones in the past sank together to the bottom of the deep, dark lake outside the Fox Immortal Temple. But true retaliation had just begun. The people who had taken the autumn night white were afraid that if they disposed of it in a hurry, it would attract suspicion. After deliberating, they determined to break it up into parts, sell the autumn night white separately in several small pieces. But before they could act, one of them suddenly came down with a strange illness. First, he had sustained high fever, coughing, rapidly lost weight, and became disoriented. Next came red spots and rashes in various degrees, and his skin even began to fester. It was suffering worse than death. And it wasn't over yet. Not long after, the same symptoms appeared in all the people who had taken part in the murder that night. The villagers at last began to panic. But premeditated murder for gain was an unpardonable crime. Those who sheltered the perpetrators would be treated as guilty as well. The village head didn't dare to report this to an official. All he could do was gather the clan elders to discuss it together. An elder skilled in addressing gods and spirits performed a ritual in the memorial hall and was possessed by an ancestor of the Tian clan. The ancestor said that the villagers had moved to evil designs by the sight of riches and committed murder. The soul of the unjustly dead victim was restless and had become a fierce ghost demanding lives in recompense. This was a punishment from heaven. The evildoers must atone for this crime, and their accomplices must calm the resentment. This talk of supernatural retribution was just enough to fool the panicked villagers. The village head ordered a sacrifice to be prepared, then collected some villagers to have the killers who had fallen ill lifted into festooned carts. Following the ancient ritual of offering sacrifices to the river god, they threw the guilty men into the water in order to calm the resentment of the murdered Taoist priests. After this sacrifice was performed, there was still fear remaining in the villagers' hearts. They gritted their teeth and tossed the inauspicious autumn night white into the river as well, thinking that this ought to calm the storm. But not long after, yet another villager developed identical symptoms. The spirit of the murdered man at the bottom of the river had not yet let them off the hook. One wrong step was followed by many wrong steps. In order to correct their error, the villagers had already made more unforgivable errors. They were all grasshoppers tied to the same string. No one had better think of hopping along. The village that was like a paradise henceforth became an abyss of suffering. Every time a person developed symptoms of the illness, they would be thrown into the river by the villagers. Day after day, the river was like an enormous maw that would never be satisfied. Sooner or later, it would swallow them all, until there was almost nothing left. Between heaven and earth, the night was boundless. Only in this abandoned temple was there a bit of precious firelight. Fu Shen didn't speak for a long time. Yan Shaohan remembered the bolt of heavenly lightning that had struck the divine statue. Perhaps there really was some obscure heavenly will guiding them. If not for that bolt of lightning, they would have gone directly to Jingshu after resting at the Fox Immortal Temple, and wouldn't have lingered in this little village. They certainly wouldn't have discovered the secret that the whole village was keeping stoppered up here like a bottle. In the legend concerning the Fox Immortal Temple, the fox had incurred the wrath of heaven by predicting a flood. So this time, could it have been the fox giving another warning, sending them to find the truth, avert the monstrous tide that was drawing near? There was never any fierce ghost demanding lives in recompense. It's a plague. Perhaps it was because the murderers all touched that Taoist blood that they contracted the same illness that infected other people in the town, Fu Shen said coldly. This is the cycle of cause and effect. A disaster one brings onto oneself cannot be survived. Your husband's illness is already beyond remedy by medicine, Yan Shaohan said to Miss Oi. All that remains is for him to die. You probably have many years left to live. With such a major case in Shishan village, when the local official comes to investigate, no one will get away. But since you have encountered the two of us, we can make an exception and permit you to seek your own means of living. What do you think about that? Mrs. Oi lay prostrate, weeping. My husband and I were each other's first marriage and have lived in loving kindness for many years. How can it be broken off just like that? I hope my benefactors will be generous. Fu Shen pitied her and was about to make a promise when he was stopped by a look from Yan Shaohan. His illness is infectious. However pitiful, we still can't allow him to leave alive. He didn't keep his voice low. Miss Oi heard him perfectly. She was utterly devastated, but in the end she couldn't persuade the cold-hearted Fei Long guard. She was dragged out by Fu Shen and watched as Yan Xiaohan found dry wood for kindling and spread it out. Shortly, thick smoke was rising into the sky. The Fox Immortal Temple had become a sea of flame. Mrs. Oi knelt blankly on the ground. Her tears were already dry. The rims of her eyes were bright red, but she couldn't shed another tear. Fu Shen gave her a fairly weighty purse and calmly said, "Your road is still long. Go somewhere else and get married again to a good man. One day you'll be able to forget him." Having said this, he turned and walked into the boundless night with Yan Xiaohan. Miss Oi clutched the purse in her hand. Her eyes reflected the golden red flames. After a long moment, she whispered an answer. "I can't forget." How could there be a rest of her life after such calamity? In this world, it was the one who went first who wouldn't look back, and the one left behind who was most to be pitied. Well, on that note, that's actually where we're going to end it for tonight. I mean, that is kind of a good place to end it because it sounds like more stuff is going to happen very soon after. But wow, we definitely got some more information about like what that drug was. So white knight, oh gosh, it always trips me up because I feel like the words are out of order. White Knight Dew. Like, I know it's White Dew. White Knight Dew. Like, I know it's White Dew is the, like, refined stuff. But I've said it probably like 50 times. Yeah, things are really getting exciting. Like, it's definitely heating up. They're finding trails. We've got a little bit of mysticism. Autumn Night Whites. Like, I feel like it should be White Nights, but it's Autumn Night Whites. And that's why every single time I say it, it feels like I'm stumbling. But yes, things really are getting exciting. And I'm kind of glad to see that it's like, much as I love their relationship, like, there's still a decent amount of the book left. So, like, I'm like, I love your relationship, but I'm glad, like, we're also getting this, like, murder mystery, like, intrigue aspect, because I really do enjoy that in Danmei too. But yeah, it's actually quite a good spot to stop it. I kind of wonder if them being merciful is like there's two ways that's gonna go. Like, either it could be like fortuitous for them, or else it's gonna come back and bite them in the ass. Like, honestly, there's part of me that kind of thought like them being merciful was going to like be what will help you along, like, because they got what information they could out of her. And let's be honest, our buddies kind of have a bit of a ruthlessness streak to them. So I was kind of a little surprised they let her go, also because they were like, your husband has this infectious disease that we're not really sure what it is. Like, yep, go further, potentially spread, be a carrier. I was surprised by it. I don't know if I'm just not giving them enough credit, like, in that statement, but yeah. I'm pretty satisfied with tonight. Yeah, it's heating up, it's getting exciting. We had some lovey-dovey moments, we had some real kind of hard moments between our boys where not just easy feelings came into play, which again just reiterates why I like this. Is it's very real. There are moments where you lack confidence in your relationship, where you feel down, and it's hard. Yeah. So, like usual, we will continue at chapter 57 to 63, or no, to 62. 57 to 62 next Tuesday, which will be the 6th. Let me see. Be the 6th. Yep, that'll be Tuesday at 8 CST. Like usual. Anybody doing anything for May 4th? May the 4th be with you. I am actually going and playing board games with a friend. With a group of friends. But if any of you are celebrating May 4th, I hope you have a great time. I know I will. And on that note, I hope you all have a lovely rest of your evening and a great weekend, May 4th or not. And I will see you all Tuesday for the next chapters, the next episode in our book. Good night. Oh, where's my little end stream button? It's not popping up like usual. What's going on? Ah, I found it. Wait. Computer issues at the very end. My goodness. Stop it. Okay. There it is. Good night.